There are houses that know how to choose their owners. And there are women who, in the darkest moments of their lives, find themselves within walls about to collapse. This is the story of one of them. And if you've ever felt too old to start over, this story is for you. The road to Los Rios cut through the desert like a scar that refused to heal. Eleanor Hartley gripped the steering wheel of her aging pickup truck with hands that had forgotten what certainty felt like. 42 years old, divorced, nearly broke, and driving toward what everyone had told her was a terrible mistake. In the passenger seat, 8-year-old Lily clutched a stuffed bear, worn thin from too many nights of comfort. The child's dark eyes watched the endless stretch of sand and sky with the kind of wariness that belonged to someone much older. Mom, Lily's voice was small. What if the new house has ghosts? Eleanor glanced at her daughter, forcing a smile she didn't quite feel. Sweetheart, I don't believe in ghosts. I only believe in termites and bad wiring. Emma at school said Dad left us because you're old now. The words hit like a physical blow. Eleanor's hands tightened on the wheel until her knuckles went white. The desert blurred for a moment before she blinked hard, willing the tears back. I'm 42, baby. That's not old. That's just starting over. But even as she said it, Eleanor wondered if she believed it herself. 2 years ago, Daniel had packed his bags while she stood frozen in their bedroom doorway. His words still echoed in the hollow spaces of her chest. I'm too young to feel this old, Ellie. I need to actually live before it's too late. You understand, don't you? She had understood. She understood that 15 years of marriage, of putting his construction business first, of sacrificing her own engineering career to manage his books and raise their daughter, all of it had meant nothing the moment a 26-year-old project manager smiled at him across a job site. Los Rios appeared on the horizon like a mirage that refused to disappear. The town was barely a town at all, just a handful of buildings clinging to existence in defiance of the desert's hunger. The main street was cracked asphalt lined with faded signs and windows that reflected nothing but emptiness. Eleanor pulled up to a gas station where an elderly attendant pointed toward the northern hills when she asked for directions. You'll see it, he said, his weathered face creasing with something that might have been concern. The Brennan place. Only thing up there still standing that probably shouldn't be. As they drove up the winding dirt road, Lily pressed her face to the window. Mom, look. The house rose against the sky like a monument to stubbornness. 3 stories of Victorian architecture that time had beaten, but not broken. The roof sagged in the middle, paint had peeled away to expose gray wood beneath, and half the shutters hung at angles that defied geometry. It looks sad, Lily whispered. Eleanor killed the engine and sat for a moment, staring at what $12,000 had bought her. Everything she had left after the divorce, after the debts, after starting over from nothing. Yeah, she said softly, like us. But we're going to make it beautiful again. The front door opened with a groan of protest. Inside, the air was thick with decades of silence. Dust swirled in shafts of light that fell through broken windows. A grand staircase split by cracks rose to the second floor. In what must have once been a parlor, a chandelier lay shattered on the floor like frozen tears. In a study near the back of the house, Eleanor found a photograph in a tarnished silver frame. A man in his early 50s, sleeves rolled up, standing beside what looked like some kind of mechanical apparatus. His eyes were intelligent and kind. She turned the frame over, written in faded ink on the back, Walter Brennan, hydrologist, 1946. Who's that? Lily asked. The man who built this house. He was a scientist, studied water. In the desert? Especially in the desert, baby. As sunset painted the ruined hallway gold, Eleanor heard a voice call from outside. Hello? Anyone home? An elderly woman stood at the gate, a basket in her hands. She was perhaps 80, though her eyes still held the sharpness of someone decades younger. Her silver hair was pulled back, and her weathered face spoke of a life fully lived. "I'm Margaret Chen," the woman said, "but everyone calls me Maggie. I live next door. Thought you might be hungry after the drive." The basket contained still warm bread and soup that smelled like comfort. "Thank you," Eleanor said, startled by the kindness. "I'm Eleanor." "Ellie, this is my daughter Lily." Maggie's gaze took in the house, the battered truck, the weariness that clung to both mother and daughter like dust. "You bought the Brennan house. Everyone keeps saying that like it's a warning." "Because it is, dear. 3 contractors tried to restore it. All of them quit. People say it's cursed." Eleanor laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I don't believe in curses, Mrs. Chen. Call me Maggie." The older woman studied her for a long moment. "This house has been waiting for someone. Maybe that someone is you." That night, Eleanor and Lily slept in the trailer she'd rented and parked near the construction site. In the darkness, Lily's voice drifted across the narrow space between their bunks. "Mom, do you miss Dad?" Eleanor stared at the ceiling, where shadows from the moonlight played across cheap paneling. "I miss who I was before I met him," she finally said. "I miss the woman who believed she could do anything." "I'm trying to find her again. Is she in the house?" "Maybe, baby. Maybe she is." "And you, where are you listening to this story? On your morning commute? Sitting by a window with your afternoon tea? Leave me a comment and let me know. And if you've ever had to start over after a great loss, I understand how you feel." The first week passed in a blur of demolition and dust. Eleanor hired Carlos Rivera, a 29-year-old foreman whose crew attacked the house with honest work. They hauled out decades of debris, shattered furniture, rotted floorboards, the accumulated sorrow of abandonment. Eleanor worked alongside them, sleeves rolled up, hands developing new calluses over old scars. At night, she collapsed into the trailer's narrow bed, too exhausted even for dreams. But Lily explored. On the 4th day, she came running to find her mother. "Mom, I found a picture in the office." It was the same photograph Eleanor had seen that first day, but Lily held it like treasure. "He looks nice," Lily said. "Why did he leave this beautiful house?" Eleanor took the frame, studying Walter Brennan's face again. There was something in his expression, a quiet determination that she recognized. "I don't think he left, sweetheart. I think something happened to him." That afternoon, Eleanor walked across the dusty yard to where Maggie lived. The older woman's garden was an oasis in the desert, herbs and vegetables growing in carefully tended beds. Maggie invited her in for tea. The house was small but immaculate, filled with photographs spanning decades. "You want to know about Walter Brennan," Maggie said, pouring tea into delicate cups. Eleanor wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "Everyone in town talks about the house like it has a dark history, but no one will tell me what actually happened." Maggie settled into her chair with the slow care of age. Walter Brennan was a brilliant man, a hydrologist. In the 1940s, he became obsessed with an idea: extracting water from air itself. Atmospheric water generation. Imagine it, Eleanor. Technology that could bring water to the driest places on Earth. That's possible. It is now. It wasn't then, or at least everyone thought it wasn't. But Walter believed. He spent years developing prototypes, refining his designs. By 1946, he had something that worked. Eleanor leaned forward. "So what happened?" "He made the mistake of sharing his discovery with the wrong person, a businessman named Thomas Henley. Thomas saw dollar signs, military contracts, patents worth millions. He wanted Walter to sign everything over to him. But Walter refused. Walter wanted the technology to be freely available, especially to poor communities suffering from drought. Thomas called him naive. They argued. And then in March of 1947, Walter Brennan died in a car accident on the highway outside town. The tea suddenly tasted bitter. "You don't think it was an accident?" I was only 5 years old in 1947, but some memories burn too deep to fade. I remember my father, who was also an engineer, telling my mother that night, Thomas Henley just killed a good man. But the Henley family was powerful. No one dared speak up. What happened to Walter's wife? Margaret. She sold the house and disappeared. No one ever saw her again. Eleanor sat in silence. Outside the window, the Brennan house rose against the afternoon sky, holding its secrets close. Why are you telling me this, Maggie? The older woman reached across the table and took Eleanor's hand. Because I think Margaret hid something before she left. I think she was waiting for someone to find it. Someone who would know what to do with it. And when I look at you, dear, I see a woman who needs to believe in something worth fighting for. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She walked through the house by flashlight, seeing it differently now. Not just a renovation project, but a mystery. On the second floor at the end of a hallway, she entered what must have been the master bedroom. Moonlight fell through a half-broken window, and there against one wall stood an enormous wardrobe made of dark redwood. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Vines twisted into flowers along the door panels, birds caught mid-flight across the top. Despite decades of neglect, the structure was solid. Eleanor approached it slowly. When she pulled the doors open, they groaned like they were waking from a long sleep. Inside was only emptiness and the faint scent of cedar. But when she leaned closer, running her hands along the back panel, she felt it, a seam where there shouldn't be one. The wood was slightly different color. Someone had removed this panel and replaced it. Her heart began to beat faster. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow when there's proper light. But sleep was impossible. She lay in the trailer staring at the ceiling, thinking about Walter Brennan standing in that bedroom, knowing danger was coming, making a choice about what mattered most. Morning came with the smell of dust and heat. Eleanor waited until Lily left with Maggie for the local library. Then she returned to the bedroom with a crowbar and a flashlight. The wardrobe stood exactly as she left it, patient and silent. Eleanor wedged the crowbar between the back panel and the frame, working carefully. The wood shifted with a dry groan. A stale breath of air escaped, and there in the hollow space behind the panel was a metal box wrapped in canvas. Eleanor's hands trembled as she lifted it out. The lock had rusted through. It opened with barely any pressure. Inside were papers, dozens of them, yellowed with age but still legible. Blueprints, mathematical equations, detailed schematics labeled Atmospheric Water Extraction System, Prototype A1, and letters, handwritten letters in flowing script. Eleanor sat on the dusty floor and began to read. My dearest Margaret, the board rejected my proposal again today. Thomas grows more insistent that I sign over the patents. He says I'm being foolish, that we could be wealthy beyond measure. He doesn't understand that some things matter more than wealth. If we can prove the condensation chamber works at scale, we could bring water to regions where none exists. This technology could save lives, Margaret. How can I put a price on that? But Thomas only sees dollar signs. All my love, Walter. Eleanor's throat tightened. She flipped through more pages, watching the tone shift from hopeful to worried to frightened. March 10th, 1947. My darling, Thomas came to the house tonight with two men I've never seen before. They weren't friendly. He gave me 1 week to reconsider. He said if I don't sign the patents over, he'll make sure I lose everything. I've decided to hide the prototypes and all documentation. I won't destroy years of work because one man's greed has poisoned his soul. Promise me, if someone discovers this years from now, you'll make sure they understand. This technology was never meant for profit. The final letter was dated March 15th, 1947. Margaret, if you're reading this, it means they've come. I want you to know that I don't regret my choices. I only regret that I might not see you grow old. Hide these documents. Keep them safe. Someday the world will be ready for the truth. I love you more than water loves the desert. Forever yours, Walter. Tears blurred Eleanor's vision. She thought of Daniel, of his casual cruelty. And here was Walter Brennan, 70 years dead, showing her what real love looked like, what integrity meant. She pulled out her phone and took photographs of every single page, every blueprint, every letter, every calculation. Then she called James Keller. James had been her divorce attorney, a quiet man in his late 40s who had handled her case with unexpected gentleness. After everything was finalized, he told her if she ever needed anything to call. James, it's Eleanor. I need to see you. Today if possible. It's important. His voice was warm, concerned. Ellie? Of course. Where are you? Los Rios, the house I told you about. James, I found something. Something that I think people were killed to hide. I'll be there in 2 hours. When James arrived, he looked exactly as she remembered. Tall, gray, beginning to show at his temples, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. But seeing him here, she noticed things she'd been too numb to see before. The way his face lit up when he saw her. She showed him the documents in the trailer. James spread them across the small table, his expression growing more serious with each page. Ellie, he said finally, do you understand what you have here? Letters from a dead man? No. Evidence that Walter Brennan invented atmospheric water generation technology 70 years before Hydro Global Energy claimed they did. If this is authentic, and I think it is, this represents potentially billions of dollars in stolen intellectual property. Eleanor's mouth went dry. What? Hydro Global is one of the largest water technology companies in the world. They went public in 2015 with a revolutionary system for extracting water from air. Made their founders billionaires. He tapped Walter's blueprints. This is almost identical to their patented design. How is that possible? James sat back, his face grave. Thomas Henley had a grandson, Victor Henley. He's the current CEO of Hydro Global Energy. The implications settled over Eleanor like a weight. They built their entire company on technology they stole from Walter Brennan. And if this gets out, it destroys them. Eleanor thought about the letters, about Margaret hiding them and then running. That's why Walter died. That's why Margaret was terrified. James reached across the table and took her hand. Ellie, you need to be very careful. We're talking about people who have billions of dollars to protect. I want you to come stay at my house in Santa Fe until we figure out what to do with this. She looked at their joined hands, feeling something stir that she thought was dead. But then she thought about the house, about Lily, about the woman she was trying to become. I can't run, James. I put everything I have into this project. Then let me help you. I'll stay. We'll figure this out together. And in that moment, Eleanor realized she wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, Lily was playing in the yard when she suddenly ran to her mother, face tight with worry. Mom, that car is here again. Eleanor looked up. At the end of the long driveway, partially hidden by desert scrub, sat a black SUV with tinted windows. She'd seen it yesterday too. Now her stomach went cold. Eleanor pulled out her phone and dialed the local police. The dispatcher promised to send someone when a unit was available, but the bored tone suggested it wouldn't be soon. 2 hours later, her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Hartley. The voice was male, smooth, cultured. My name is Victor Henley. I represent Hydro Global Energy. I believe we should have a conversation. Her breath caught. How did you get this number? Mrs. Hartley, please. We're both adults. You've purchased the Brennan property. We understand there may be certain historical documents that inadvertently remained on the premises. I'd like to make you a generous offer for their return. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course not. But should you happen to come across any papers, blueprints, journals, please reach out. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation, say $50,000. Enough to complete your renovations and provide for your daughter's future? The mention of Lily made Eleanor's blood run cold. You need to stop calling me Mrs. Hartley. Eleanor, I'm trying to be reasonable here. Those documents, if they exist, are family property. I'd hate for this to become unpleasant. She hung up, her hand trembling. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She lay in the darkness of the trailer, listening to Lily's soft breathing, thinking about Victor Henley's voice, the implied threat. She thought about Margaret Brennan, terrified and alone, hiding the documents and then fleeing. Had someone threatened her too? Eleanor got up and walked to the window. Stars filled the sky above, indifferent witnesses to human struggles. But she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, someone was watching. If you were Eleanor, what would you do? Protect your child and run, or fight for justice even if it means taking risks? Let me know in the comments. Sometimes mothers have to make the hardest choices of all. The next morning brought a development that changed everything. Carlos pulled Eleanor aside, his expression troubled. Senora Hartley, I need to tell you something. 2 of my crew didn't show up today. They said someone approached them yesterday after work, offered them money to quit. What? Who? They didn't say. Just that they were scared. And my wife, she's 7 months pregnant. Last night someone called our house, knew her name, knew about the baby, said I should consider whether this job is worth my family's safety. Eleanor felt the world tilt. Carlos, I'm so sorry. You should quit. I can't ask you to stay if... I'm not quitting, he said firmly, but I wanted you to know what we're dealing with. These people, whoever they are, they're serious. That afternoon, James arrived back from Santa Fe with someone, a woman in her early 50s with sharp eyes and a recording device. Ellie, this is Julia Ramos. She's an investigative journalist who specializes in corporate fraud cases. Julia shook Eleanor's hand firmly. Mr. Keller showed me the photographs you sent. If those documents are authentic, we're looking at one of the biggest cases of technology theft in modern history. But I need to see the originals. They gathered in the trailer. Eleanor brought out the box, and Julia spent an hour examining each page with careful attention. Finally, she looked up. This is real. I'll need expert verification, but everything checks out. The paper, the ink, the technical details, it all corresponds to 1940s materials. So what do we do? Eleanor asked. We expose it. I write the story. We publish simultaneously across multiple platforms so they can't suppress it. But Eleanor, once we do this, there's no going back. Hydro Global will come after you with everything they have. Are you prepared for that? Eleanor thought about Lily, about the life she wanted to give her daughter. A life where women didn't run from powerful men, didn't hide the truth to stay safe. Yes, she said, I'm ready. That night, as Eleanor was putting Lily to bed in the trailer, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it and felt her heart stop. It was a photograph of Lily at school that very day, playing on the swings. Taken from a distance, but unmistakably her daughter. Below it, a single line. Your daughter is beautiful. It would be a shame if anything happened to her. Sell the house. Leave Los Rios. Final warning. Eleanor couldn't breathe. The phone slipped from her nerveless fingers. When James found her 10 minutes later, she was sitting on the trailer steps, shaking. He read the message and his face went white. That's it. I'm calling the FBI. This is extortion and threatening a minor. But Eleanor was already dialing a different number. Mom, her voice cracked. I need you to do something for me. I need you to come get Lily. Today, right now, and keep her with you in Albuquerque until I say it's safe. Her mother didn't ask questions. I'll be there in 2 hours. Saying goodbye to Lily was the hardest thing Eleanor had ever done. Her daughter clung to her, sensing something terrible. Mommy, I don't want to leave you alone. I know, baby, I know. But remember what I told you? Sometimes we have to be brave even when we're scared. I need to do something important, and I need to know you're safe while I do it. Are bad people trying to hurt us? Eleanor pulled back, looking into her daughter's eyes. Some people are trying to scare me, yes, but they're not going to win, because your mom is stronger than they think. Like the house? Yes, sweetheart, exactly like the house. After her mother's car disappeared down the dirt road, Eleanor stood alone in front of the Brennan house. The sun was setting, painting the ruined walls gold. For the first time in 2 years, she felt completely, utterly alone, but also, strangely, free. She walked inside and climbed to the second floor. In the bedroom with the wardrobe, she sat on the floor, back against the solid wood. I'm 42 years old, she said aloud to the empty room. I let a man define my worth for 15 years. I let him make me small and scared and convinced I was too old to matter. But you, Margaret, you were terrified and alone, and you still found the courage to hide the truth. You waited 70 years for someone to find it. I won't let you down. The house creaked around her, settling as the desert cooled. It almost sounded like agreement. The next 3 days passed in tense calm. Carlos and 2 loyal crew members continued work, though Eleanor insisted they leave before dark. James stayed in a motel in town but spent every day helping her reinforce locks, install cameras. Maggie visited daily, bringing food and her quiet, steady presence. The older woman never asked what was happening, but her eyes understood everything. On the 4th day, Julia called. I've verified everything with 3 independent experts. The documents are authentic. Walter Brennan invented atmospheric water generation in 1946, and Hydro Global has built a multi-billion-dollar company on that theft. What's our next move? I want to try something different, a live broadcast. You sitting in that house, telling the story directly to the camera, showing the documents in real time. Stream it simultaneously on every platform. Make it impossible to suppress. Make you too visible to silence. Eleanor's mouth went dry. You want me to put a target on my back. I want you to make yourself bulletproof through exposure. If millions of people are watching you reveal this, they can't touch you without creating a martyr. It's risky, but it might be our best shot. That evening, Eleanor stood in front of the bathroom mirror in the trailer. She looked tired, older than 42. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before the divorce, gray threads in her dark hair. She thought about what Emma at school had said to Lily. Your mom is old now. Maybe I am, she whispered to her reflection. But old women are dangerous. We have nothing left to lose. The following afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up to the house. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Victor Henley had come in person. Eleanor met him on the front porch, James beside her. Victor looked at the house with something that might have been regret. Mrs. Hartley, he extended his hand. She didn't take it. I felt we should speak face to face. About what? How you're terrorizing my family. Victor's jaw tightened. I want you to understand something. I did not order the threats against your daughter. That was my board acting without my knowledge. When I found out, I was appalled. But you knew about the stolen technology. Yes. He looked away. My grandfather was a murderer. Thomas Henley killed Walter Brennan. I've known for 5 years. Letters, a confession even, written when he was dying. But by then, Hydro Global was worth billions. Eleanor stared at him. And you did nothing. I tried to bury it, paid people to keep quiet, convinced myself I was protecting innocent employees, shareholders. But I was really just protecting myself. He met her eyes. I came here to make you an offer. $2 million. You give me the documents, walk away, and never speak of this again. No, Mrs. Hartley, please think about your daughter, about what kind of life that money could give her. I am thinking about my daughter, Eleanor said quietly. I'm thinking about what kind of mother I want to be. The kind who teaches her that money matters more than truth? Or the kind who shows her that some things are worth fighting for? Victor was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. You're not going to sell? No. Then I suppose there's nothing more to say. Except be careful, Mrs. Hartley. My board members are not reasonable people, and they have far more to lose than I do. As the car drove away, James turned to Eleanor. Do you believe him? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. We're doing this anyway. That night, as Eleanor prepared for the broadcast scheduled in 2 days, her phone rang. Unknown number again. Something made her answer. Mrs. Hartley, a woman's voice this time, cold and professional. My name is Catherine Henley, Victor's wife. I'm calling to tell you that my husband is weak, sentimental, but I am not. Eleanor's blood ran cold. If you go through with this broadcast, I will spend every dollar of our fortune destroying you. Your daughter will never feel safe again. Your precious James will lose his law license. That old woman who brings you soup, Maggie Chen, I know where she lives. I know she's alone. You can't. I can, and I will. Victor may have a conscience, but I have lawyers. The best money can buy. And unlike my husband, I don't lose sleep over what happened 70 years ago. The line went dead. Eleanor sat frozen for 10 seconds. Then she called Julia. We're going live in 1 hour, she said. Not tomorrow, tonight, right now, before they can do anything else. Julia didn't hesitate. I'll be there in 20 minutes. James came running when Eleanor called. Maggie appeared at the door without being asked. Within an hour, Julia had set up lighting and cameras in the parlor, streaming equipment that would broadcast to the world. Are you sure about this? James asked one more time. Once we start, there's no taking it back. Eleanor thought about Catherine Henley's cold voice, about Walter and Margaret Brennan, about the woman she wanted to be for her daughter. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Julia counted down. 3, 2, 1. We're live. Eleanor looked into the camera, and somewhere out there, people began to watch. She took a breath and began. My name is Eleanor Hartley. I'm 42 years old, a single mother, and I bought this house for $12,000 because it was all I could afford after my divorce. Everyone told me it was a mistake. They said the house was cursed, and maybe it is, but not in the way they think. She held up the first document. Inside these walls, I found the truth about a man named Walter Brennan, who 70 years ago invented technology that could have changed the world. Technology to extract water from air itself. But a man named Thomas Henley wanted to profit from it. And when Walter refused to let greed control his discovery, Thomas Henley had him killed. The numbers climbed. 10,000 viewers, 20,000. Walter's wife, Margaret, hid these documents. She waited for someone to find them, someone who would have the courage to tell the truth. Tonight, I'm releasing every page to the public domain, because some things are more important than money. Some things are more important than safety. 50,000 viewers, 100,000. Eleanor looked directly into the camera, and her voice grew stronger. To every woman watching who has been told she's too old, too scared, too broken to matter, I see you. To everyone who has ever felt invisible, this is for us. The truth doesn't age. It doesn't get tired. It just waits for someone brave enough to speak it. She spent the next hour showing documents, reading letters, explaining Walter's technology, and how Hydro Global had built an empire on theft and murder. By the time Eleanor finished, 3 million people had watched. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By morning, every major news organization in the country was covering the story. The FBI announced an investigation into Hydro Global Energy, and by noon, 4 people had been arrested, 3 board members on charges of extortion and making terroristic threats, and Catherine Henley. Federal prosecutors revealed she had orchestrated everything: the threats against Lily, the surveillance, plans for arson. Victor had been blind to his wife's ruthlessness until it was too late. When Maggie heard the news, she came to Eleanor with tears in her eyes. "That woman threatened me," the old woman said. "Me? I survived raising 3 children alone, buried a husband, and outlived 3 doctors who said I'd be dead by 60. As if some corporate villain could scare me." They laughed together then, the kind of laughter that comes after surviving something terrible. Victor Henley called Eleanor's phone one last time that afternoon. "Mrs. Hartley, I want you to know that I didn't know. About Catherine, about what she'd planned. When the FBI showed me the evidence," his voice broke, "I've filed for divorce. I'm resigning from Hydro Global, and I'm transferring all patents related to atmospheric water generation to the public domain." "Why?" "Because you were right. Some things matter more than money. I'm establishing a foundation in Walter Brennan's name to provide free water technology to developing nations. It won't undo what my grandfather did, but it's a start." "What about you?" There was a long pause. "For the first time in 5 years, Mrs. Hartley, I'll be able to sleep at night." After he hung up, Eleanor sat in the morning sunlight streaming through the repaired windows. The house was quiet around her, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not abandonment, but peace. James found her there. He sat beside her on the floor, their shoulders touching. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Exhausted, terrified, alive." He turned to look at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. "Ellie, I need you to know, I care about you. Not as your lawyer, as someone who thinks you're the bravest person he's ever met." Tears pricked her eyes. "James, I'm a mess. I'm 42, broke, with a daughter and a house that's falling apart." "You're 42, he said softly, "and you just took down a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You turned a cursed house into a symbol of justice. I think that makes you extraordinary." She kissed him then, there in the dusty parlor of the Brennan house, and it felt like beginning again. Not a fairy tale romance, but something real. 3 months later, Los Rios experienced something it hadn't seen in decades: community. The story had brought attention, visitors, hope. Local businesses reopened. Young families moved to town. The house itself transformed. With donations from around the country, Eleanor completed the restoration. The roof was replaced, the walls repaired, the windows gleamed, but she kept the wardrobe exactly where it was. The night before the dedication ceremony, Eleanor sat on Lily's bed in their new apartment above what would become the center's offices. She watched her daughter sleep, the child's face peaceful now. Lily's eyes fluttered open. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm perfect, baby. I was just thinking about how brave you were when I sent you away, when you didn't understand why." Lily sat up. "I was scared, not of the bad people. I was scared you wouldn't come back." Eleanor pulled her daughter close. "You know what I learned? Being scared doesn't make you weak. Loving someone enough to be terrified for them, that's the strongest thing in the world. Is that why you fought? Because you love me?" "I fought because I love you, but also because I needed to love myself again. To show you that women don't have to be young to be powerful, that moms can be heroes too." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're my hero, Mom. You always were, even when Dad said those mean things." And Eleanor, who had held herself together through threats and fire and fear, finally let herself cry. Not tears of sadness, but of release, of healing. The next morning dawned clear and bright. People gathered for the dedication ceremony. News crews, scientists, local residents, visitors from across the country. Eleanor watched as Maggie climbed the front steps. The older woman approached the plaque mounted beside the door and pulled away its covering. The Walter and Margaret Brennan Center for Water Innovation. Maggie turned to face the crowd. I'm 83 years old. I've lived in Los Rios my entire life, and for most of that time, this house has stood empty, keeping its secrets, waiting. Walter Brennan died before I was old enough to know him, but his legacy has waited patiently for someone worthy to carry it forward. Today, we honor both Walter and Margaret, and we honor Eleanor Hartley, who proved that truth and courage can change the world. The applause was thunderous. Lily, standing beside her mother, squeezed Eleanor's hand. Are you happy, Mom? Eleanor looked at the house, at Maggie's proud face, at James standing among the crowd, at Carlos and his wife holding their newborn baby. Yes, sweetheart, I think I finally am. Later, Eleanor climbed the stairs to the bedroom one last time. The wardrobe stood in the corner, solid and eternal. She placed flowers on its top shelf, beside the framed photographs of Walter and Margaret. I hope I made you proud, she whispered. The house settled around her with a soft creak, and for just a moment, Eleanor could have sworn she felt the lightest touch on her shoulder. Margaret's hand, or maybe just the house itself, saying thank you. Outside, through the window, she could see Lily playing with other children. James was helping Maggie plant trees. The desert stretched away in all directions, but somehow it seemed less empty now. That evening, as the sun set over Los Rios, Eleanor stood on the front porch. Behind her, the windows glowed with warm light. Music drifted from inside, voices and laughter. She thought about Daniel, about the woman she'd been when he left her. That woman would have believed him when he said she was too old, would have accepted that her best years were behind her. But that woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who had learned that courage wasn't about not being afraid. It was about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. Eleanor touched the wall of the house, feeling its solid permanence. We did it, she said softly. Both of us. We stood back up. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the Brennan house stood proud and whole, finally fulfilling the purpose it had waited 70 years to achieve. 1 year later, the email came on a Tuesday morning while Eleanor was reviewing applications for the center's first research fellowship. Dear Ms. Hartley, we've followed your story with great interest. Walter Brennan's designs have inspired our team to develop a solar-powered version. We've successfully deployed prototypes in 3 villages in sub-Saharan Africa, providing clean water to over 2,000 people. None of this would have been possible without your courage. Walter's dream is becoming reality. Eleanor read the email 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She printed it and took it upstairs, placing it beside Walter and Margaret's photographs. Lily found her there. The child, now 9, had grown taller, more confident. Mom, people are arriving for the board meeting. I'll be right down, baby. Lily paused in the doorway. Mom, Mrs. Chen said that sometimes houses choose their owners. Do you think this house chose us? Eleanor looked around the bedroom, at the wardrobe that had kept its secrets for 7 decades, at the walls that had stood through abandonment and finally found purpose. Yes, she said, I think it did. I think we chose each other. That evening, long after the meeting ended, Eleanor sat on the front porch watching the stars emerge. The desert night was cool and vast and no longer felt empty. Lights glowed from houses throughout Los Rios. Children's laughter echoed from somewhere down the street. The town that had been dying was alive again. Eleanor thought about all the women who would hear this story, women who had been told they were too old, too broken, too ordinary to matter. Women who looked in the mirror and saw only their failures and their years. She hoped they would understand what she had learned, that the most powerful version of yourself isn't the young one. It's the one who has survived, the one who knows loss and keeps going anyway, the one who transforms pain into purpose. The house settled around her in the darkness, solid and permanent and full of light. And somewhere, in whatever place the dead go to watch the living, Eleanor liked to imagine that Walter and Margaret Brennan were smiling. And so our story ends, though Eleanor's journey continues. If you're at an age when society tells you to be quiet, to step aside, remember this. Eleanor Hartley was 42 years old when she changed the world. Your best chapter might still be ahead of you. Never let anyone tell you it's too late to become the most powerful version of yourself. Thank you for listening.